like to call to order the West Covina Planning Commission meeting for Tuesday, October 24th at 7:10 p.m. I would ask the public if they plan on speaking on anything on either on the agenda or non-agenda items, they need to fill out a card that's on the podium here. And please put on that card whether it's an agenda item or non-agenda item. We will, during oral communications, we will take those cards on non-agenda items, and then during the meeting, we will take the cards that were turned in, and I have a couple of them here for item 2 and number 3. You'll be able to talk at that time on that agenda item. I would ask that you all now stand for a Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for a moment of silent prayer and meditation. Please stand, face the flag, and follow me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. We have roll call, please.
Commissioner Hing? Here. Commissioner Jimenez?
Present.
Commissioner Redholz?
Here.
Commissioner Castellanos?
Here. Chairman
Holtz?
Here. Are there any changes or addition to the regular meeting minutes of October 10th, 2017? None? None. If not, they stand approved. This brings us to oral communication. This is a time when any member of the public may speak to the Commission on any matter within the scope of duties assigned to the Commission relating to non-agendized or consent calendar items. Does anyone wish to speak on a non-agenda item? No? Okay. We'll close it to oral communication. Takes us to public hearings. Excuse me. My voice is breaking up here, so bear with me. Brings us to item number 2, variance number 1705, categorical exemption. Applicant Joe Campion for Sign Specialties Corporation, location 2934 West Garvey Avenue South. Request for a total of 3 wall signs to be placed on the front elevation of the existing office building. May we have a staff report, please, and who will be giving it?
Staff report will be presented by our Assistant Planner, Christine Delestrinos.
Thank you.
Where the trumpets play, THX sound thing. Slowly getting there. Good evening, Chairman and fellow commissioners. This evening, I will be presenting variance number 1705 for 2934 East Garvey Avenue South. This application was continued. Therefore, the application was not re-notified to the public. And yeah. So this is just a rough background just so that we could remember the subject property. It's located south of the 10 freeway, right below Eastland Shopping Center and right above the Medici Apartments, and also next to the In-N-Out. It's currently zoned as neighborhood commercial, and it's an existing, or medium commercial, and it's an existing office building. And here is just a brief history of the applications that we have been approved, which was basically for on-site modifications. And so, on September 26, 2017, staff presented the applicant's request to allow for 3 individual wall signs on an existing office building where the municipal code only allows for 1 building identification sign. Historically, the city has not reviewed or granted variances to allow an office building to have individual tenant wall signs. There are other office buildings in the vicinity of the subject property that currently comply with the code standards. Staff did not recommend approval and presented the Planning Commission with a resolution of denial. After staff presentation, the applicant Rick Batt, the owner of Sign Specialist Corporation, spoke in favor of the project. Mr. Batt presented examples of the proposed signs and the reasons as to why the signs are being proposed. Additionally, Ron Kelly, one of the building's owners, stated that the sign opportunity will attract good tenants in order to bring tax revenue to the city. Mr. Batt and Mr. Kelly also stated that the location of the building does not allow for the public to clearly identify the building, and therefore tenant signs are necessary. The commissioners discussed the points that were raised by Mr. Batt and Mr. Kelly. They agreed that the building does not have clear identification due to the location of the building and topography. Additionally, the commissioners expressed their concern with multiple tenant wall signs and discussed aesthetic value, including font, color, and size. Therefore, the commission voted to continue the item to today, October 24th, giving direction to staff to prepare a resolution of approval with required findings. The commission voted 3-2 to continue the item. Staff has included the staff report of September 26th and the resolution of denial in the current staff report. The applicant is proposing to deviate from the West Covina Municipal Code standards for the allowed building identification sign. Under the municipal code, office buildings are allowed a building identification sign only. Office buildings with 1 to 3 stories allow for the following as indicated by the chart that is presented to you. The concept expressed by the code is that office buildings be identifiable based on the building name. Individual tenants would identify their location by the building name, and once a patron arrives at the site, be directed to an individual tenant by a pedestrian scale directory sign. This is the same concept used here at City Hall. The applicant is proposing for some tenants of the building to advertise on the exterior wall. The applicant is requesting a variance to allow 3 individual wall signs on the front elevation of the existing office building. A wall sign is proposed to be located above the main entrance of the existing building, and 2 individual tenant signs are proposed on the east portion and the west portion of the front elevation. The applicant has indicated that the 2 lower individual tenant signs will serve the tenants occupying the given spaces. A variance is to prevent discrimination. It should be noted that variances should not be granted, which would have the effect of granting a special privilege not shared by other properties in the same vicinity and zone in which such property is situated. Therefore, the applicant is requesting a variance to deviate from the building identification standards to allow 3 tenant wall signs, where 1 building identification is allowed by code. Should the Planning Commission determine to approve the requested variance from sign standards, staff is recommending that a sign criteria be submitted for review and approval as provided in the code for multi-tenant buildings. In order to ensure that the Planning Commission is involved in the sign criteria will be forwarded to the Planning Commission for your approval. A condition of approval has been included requiring the approval of a sign criteria, which includes the following: maximum dimensions of allowed sign areas, regulations on the type of signage allowed, location of the signs, and information on the expiration of non-conforming uses, if not used for a 6-month period. During the discussion on October 10th, 2017, the Commission discussed the concept, actually that's September 26th, sorry. The Commission discussed the concept of regulating the type of font that would be allowed on the building, recognizing that office uses do not rely on foot traffic. As the sign standards currently allow for flexibility in tenant signs, staff recommends that restrictive font standards not be included in the sign criteria. So here, again, are the locations of where the signs would be. But again, a reminder is that what is presented before you is not for a master sign program. It's a variance to allow the applicant to request one. So we're not necessarily approving this sign program that's before you right now. So, as previously stated, the vast majority of office buildings in the city are in compliance with the code standards for exterior wall signs. The only building in the city that staff is aware of that allows for multiple tenant wall signs of an office building is a Lakes office building located south of the 10 freeway and west of Glendora Avenue. The office buildings maintain a sign criteria that was approved on March 15, 1990. The sign criteria allows for the Lakes office building to have 8 wall signs on the elevations facing the freeway. Additionally, the sign criteria allows for monument signs and wall signs located on the existing parking structure. The wall signs that are allowed are limited in size on location-based system. The sign criteria describes the material and the maximum sign and logo height, area, and width for the wall signs. The sign criteria allows for a total of 8 tenant signs on 2 buildings and 2 parking structures. The buildings do not have a building identification signage. So this is just staff's research on an example of an office building that does have multiple tenant signs. But this was done back in 1990. The subject property is an existing office building along East Garvey Avenue South. The 108,186 square foot building is located on a 70,685 square foot lot south of the 10 freeway. The building is currently going through remodeling per approved plans by the Planning Commission. In addition to the renovation of the building, the applicant has requested a variance to allow for 3 individual wall signs on the front elevation. The proposed 2 signs will facilitate 2 individual tenants located on the northeast elevation and the northwest elevation. The 3rd wall sign will serve a 3rd tenant, which should be located above the main entrance. The municipal code allows for office buildings to have 1 building identification sign. In addition to the allowed building identification sign, tenants with an exclusive ground floor entry may have a wall sign, and monument signs are allowed. The existing office building does not have an exclusive ground floor entry for the tenants, and historically the city has not granted variances to allow for an office building to have individual tenant wall signs. There are other office buildings in the vicinity of the subject property that currently comply with the code standards. Staff is not recommending approval. Based on the Planning Commission's vote on September 24, 2017, to continue the item, staff has prepared a resolution of approval for 3 individual wall signs on the existing building. Staff has included findings for approval stating that the building is located in a unique location, not allowing for the public to identify the building and its tenants. So before you have 2 resolutions. You have the resolution for denial and the resolution for approval. If you have any questions, I'm here to answer them, and also the applicant is here too. Thank you.
So point of clarification, all we're voting on tonight is either to allow a variance or not to allow a variance. We're not voting on anything on the signs or anything at this point in time.
Yes, so we're only, or you're only making the decision based on a variance to allow them to request
A variance.
A sign criteria, like a sign program.
Right.
So the signs that you have before you, what's going to happen is, say you do approve this variance, they would come up with their plans, and then it would go before you again. So then you would have the opportunity to review the sign program that they decide to submit.
And if we decide not to, it's...
And if you decide not to approve it, then they would not be allowed to have 3 wall signs or to request a sign program.
Thank you. We all understand that? Okay. Thank you. Any other questions of staff? None? Okay. Commissioner Reynolds?
Thank you. I know that none of us were here back in 1990, but that Lakes thing is interesting. I mean, how did they come up with this criteria, or do we know the genesis of how the number of signs, things were allowed, and how it all came together to become what it is? Does that make any sense?
I think the easy answer is no.
No.
We've not been able to find anything that clarifies that. All we have is the sign criteria, which is in our front desk, that actually says it was approved originally in '89 and then revised in 1990.
Okay, so we don't know what order that was either, whether they needed a variance, or we have none of that information.
No, yeah, it's possible that the code allowed that type of signage at the time, although I don't think so, but it's possible that it did.
So it's organic
Something like that, yes.
Okay, all right,
Maybe lost to history, maybe that's what it is.
all right, thank you.
Anyone else, questions of staff? Okay. We'll open up to public testimony. I have a card here from Joe Campion. I think he's the applicant.
I'm actually Rick Batt. I was here before you before.
Oh, okay, Rick.
Joe's here. He submitted the card, but actually deferred to me.
So is it, Joe's not going to speak then?
No, I guess he changed it.
Okay, all right.
I guess I'd hate to waste your time and energies. I was here at the last meeting and made my appeal at the time. Sorry. No worries.
Well, while we're waiting for that, we did want to mention we did receive a letter from Fabiola Wong, a West Covina resident, that was on your dais. So we just wanted to make note of that that was presented for your consideration tonight.
She's asking that we deny the variance. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, sir.
I had presented lots of information at the last meeting. You three gentlemen on the right-hand side had voted in favor of continuing the motion till tonight. It makes, I have also received the letter from Ms. Wong. It's too bad she's not here to discuss this, of course. Everybody in our democracy should have their opportunity. It's difficult for me to question any part of that, so I'll set it aside. I was in the understanding before I left here last time, which I believe I've been corrected on tonight, that the appeal for a variance was discussed last time. Would you believe that I should go through the issues and the advantageous results of what could happen for both the city and the building once again, or is that pretty much a given in this case? I don't really want to waste your time, and I'm wondering.
I don't know that I would require that. I don't know about the rest of you. No, I guess we would not.
I'll do
My
it
view
in
is
a
it's his-
nutshell.
Can you give you the Reader's Digest version of
It's
it?
his
give
case to
it-
present,
right.
so
Yeah, I'll do it in a nutshell.
it's up to you. It's your case to present.
I understand. I had thought, and I'll be very open with you, I had thought that the issue of the variance was approved and just the conditions of the variance were in debate and to be discussed here tonight. I stand corrected. So let me basically lay out the chain of events and what I believe is to be presented from the ownership of the building involved. This building is located at the bottom of a swale just to the west of the Barranca exit off of the 10 freeway. The building itself begins on the hill and ends above a parking garage when viewed from east to west. The left-hand tenant, that is the eastern tenant, exists about half and half, both on the ground floor, on the ground, and then above a parking garage. We had presented a master sign program some 11 months ago to the city to consider for this property. And at that time, and in fact at the last hearing, we're told that master sign programs were routinely used where retail clients, retail buildings were involved, but not a commercial building like this. Nearing the end of the discussion last time, roughly a month ago, the thought was to present a master sign program so that the building and the signage on the building could be considered excuse me, in perpetuity, and therefore the need for a variance of any kind in future experiences wouldn't be necessary. In the case of this building, it looks directly across the freeway at the mall. There's approximately 36 signs on display, all using or most all using corporate colors, corporate slogans, symbols, and so on. This building here, it has two tenants, well, basically on the hook waiting for the results of tonight's meeting, one being the Boys and Girls Club and their adjunct group, 5 Acres, and the second being Easter Seals, both of which have distinguishing logos and so on. The third tenant sign being requested, excuse me, there's a little fruit fly that likes me more than I like it. The third sign in consideration is to go above the 3rd floor level of the building for supposedly, or in the thought is to have the, when the 3rd floor is leased out, have that available so that the building might be named something, as I said before, the Bank of America building or something of that nature. What we're hoping to do is to give notoriety to these groups and to use as a regional headquarters to give more attention to the city of West Covina and certainly to them. Paying for, most people who come in to a large commercial building of this type, and again, this building here is 440 feet in length. Most people who want to lease a building of this nature would like their name on the outside of the building, and that tends to be a make or break point for tenancies of this type. This building doesn't have traffic coming at it from all sorts of different directions. It only has the one street, Garvey, and of course that is an east and west street and very much limited in traffic, one lane of traffic in either direction. And so in order to lease the building, the owners of the building have spent in excess of $1.1 million to renovate this building. It's been a relic, a mausoleum for years and years and years. It's been a, well, very bland, very who cares building. And if you've seen it recently, you would have seen a brand new atrium area in the back, rock and so on. So they put a lot of money into it. And now the thought is that this building is adequately designed and adequately accented to prepare and to enable a building or company with stature to move into it. That's where the landlords are at this point. Basically, currently we've been allowed to have 2 signs on the building at what is known as eyebrow level. That's above the 1st floor, and they would both need to display the same tenant information on them presently. We're asking in effect for only one more sign, that is the one at the top, and to allow one of the 2 signs at the base to be divided off for use on a different tenant name. No larger space, no different location, nothing of that nature, just be able to display 2 different names. Given the fact that the building itself is 440 feet in length, what we're talking about basically is something very similar to what we're looking at here, but about 1/3 the size. If you looked at the square footage, or the square inches in this case, of Mr. Castellanos' sign, and you separated it and placed it right over here, and then had Ms. Heng's sign here, that gives you a rough estimation of the size of the sign and the proximity between the 2. We're looking for 1 additional sign at the top, which will be placed above the main entrance point. As I said, again, to use as the name of the building. I made the point last time that the size of these signs really are representative of a pimple on the overall scope and size of the overall building, and that is absolutely the truth. If we look at the only other example in the city of multiple signs from multiple tenants on a commercial building, that is the Lakes building that was brought up earlier and shown pictures earlier. Those buildings would have 4 signs apiece, and the buildings themselves are 1/3 I believe it's approximately 1/3 the width. So, and they look nice. They do. They don't look outstanding. It's not as if this is Las Vegas and we're looking for some big garish piece to look at, and I don't think the Lakes building looks like that at all. Similarly, in this case, the foot traffic that is expected to come into Boys and Girls Club and to Easter Seals and so on, that would give Easter Seals and Boys and Girls Club enough of a viewing, shall we say, that people will say, okay, I got to get off at Barranca, or oops, I missed it and I better get off at the next exit and go back. And that's really the hope. I prepared some pictures here for you folks to look at. There are many, many photographs in here, and I'm not sure which of them it will make you happy. I'm sorry. There's 6 or 7 pages in there, and they all show corporate logos for the same kinds of organizations that we've seen here. You can leaf through them at your convenience. They're not designed to do anything other than to illustrate how a corporate logo enhances the side of a building, and that's exactly what I was hoping to do. I do appreciate the audience. I appreciate the time that we've received from the planning department. They've been very gracious in everything that's been done. And we would like the opportunity to have these signs. We have already prepared a master sign program which was submitted to the city and sent back to us in favor of this variance process. So we easily can pick up that process once again, and you folks could review those, joint actions of both the planning department and ourselves as we submit it to you at the convenience of the planning department. We're really not asking for something extraordinary. We're not asking for a new technology to be displayed. We're not asking for a billion of them in a 3 square foot area. And basically what we're trying to do here is just give the building its due. I'm free to answer questions you might have. If there are any, then certainly let it rip.
Are any of these taken in West Covina?
Yes, sir. The 4th or 5th page back is the Lakes building itself.
Oh, okay.
Just so you can see
I should
those.
say other than the lakes.
No, none others are in West Covina.
Okay.
However, I can tell you that quite a few of the companies that we have listed on those photographs do have signs and do have buildings in West Covina, First American Title being an example. We've been told that they have a West Covina property, but I just thought you were more interested in the design features of what they look like on buildings than I was of the individual piece of West Covina history.
Just a point of curiosity.
Yes, sir.
The building landlord, how come they're never here to talk about it?
Mr. Kelly was supposed to be here tonight and called about 15 minutes before we arrived. He had car trouble and was in the valley, and he's going to try to make it, but barring his...
And Mr. Kelly was here last meeting.
Yeah, he was here last time.
Last meeting, yeah, I'm saying tonight. Right.
He was supposed to be, but he had car trouble.
Just point of curiosity.
Sure. He may arrive when we're talking. I'm not sure.
Any questions of the applicant?
I have so this is a photo sim you've got here with the...
Yes, that's an example. If you can barely read it, it's so small on that photograph, and that's only about 55% or 45% of the building.
And this is your proposed tenant too, right? 5
That
acres.
is 5 acres. That's part of the Boys and Girls Club, yes.
And if somebody's going to the Boys and Girls Club or Easter Seals, why would they go in there? Would they need an appointment, or are they just off the street to deal with over the counter?
Well, I don't know their business really well, but I can
Yeah.
tell you what I've been told. If you can imagine the building itself has 2 frontages, or excuse me, 1 frontage facing the freeway. On the right-hand side is where 5 acres is. You can see the photograph both on the back and the next to the last page. Excuse me. The 5 acres people they're a group which does outreach programs. And so what happens is their volunteers are dispatched, come to the building, have meetings, make plans, are dispatched from the building to go out and do their business in the world at large. The suite itself has a parking area immediately behind it. And so they can see the sign, drive up the ramp right next to the building, park right there, come right in. They have their own separate entrance on the ground floor there. Both the Easter seals at the eastern edge and the 5 acres at the western edge have their own separate entrance. They do not need to walk through the building in any respect to go into the building, go into that suite, that is. Walk in, they'll receive their marching orders and be on their way. And so that's the reason why they have, or why we've asked that the signs themselves be focused on the suites immediately behind. Did I answer your question, sir? Okay. Anybody else?
I just wanted to make a point. You mentioned about all the signs across the freeway.
Yes.
You realize those are all retail stores?
I absolutely realize that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which yours is not a retail building.
No, but the objective is the same, and that is to note to people that here's where we are and please come on in.
Okay. Anyone else? No? Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
I have a card here from Jerry Potras. Did I say the last name right? Potras, okay, thank you.
When I worked, I'm for this variance. Let me just up front. When I worked, I would go to places like this. As part of my job, maybe we were going to partner with some group, and you'd go there for a meeting. I get lost a lot, even with the GPS. This would help me find. It makes a lot of sense. It's like the top story is one company, then they have a bunch of offices, and these other 2 buildings that I could conceivably see myself going into. As a resident of West Covina, since I was here last time and I heard all this stuff, I fortunately had occasion quite a few times in the last week to go by the building. They've done a lot of nice upgrades to the building. I personally would like, I think it's classy to have like Easter seals and these groups there off the freeway. I think it brings us up a little bit, and I like the concept of being able to have a major firm or nonprofit off our freeway. I wish it was on the north side instead of the south side, but you know me. Anyway, so I just wanted to throw my 2 cents in that I support the thing. I think it can be done with good lettering and make it look nice, and I think that if it gets those nonprofits here, it's a plus for our city. Thank you.
Jerry,
Thank you.
I want to ask, Jerry, can I ask you a question? Do you have a preference whether it's just, whether we allow, if we go forward, their logo of the individual business, or would you be okay with just regular letters? Like
Are you
just
saying
says,
just a logo or a logo and letters?
no, well, we have to, that would be a decision to make, but
Yeah.
you could just have Easter seals where it says Easter seals.
Personally, I know in my work career, logos were very important for nonprofits and schools. I think the medium could be done, and it could be done tastefully with a logo. But I wouldn't want to see that kill the thing. I actually like logos, so especially when you're in a multicultural world and you're zipping by a freeway. Sometimes just that shape helps. So that's my 3rd cent.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Absolutely.
Sorry about that.
You are,
Joe Campion.
oh, Joe Campion, okay. Thank you.
Just as a side note, I was thinking, while I was sitting there, I was thinking if I was at Disneyland or some grand big area where it was crowded with a lot of people, because I'm familiar with my wife, I could see her from 200 yards away and know that's her. And I just want to relate that in being with logos and the same fonts that some of these companies have branded themselves for 50 or 100 years. Like the Chase logo, for example. You can see that anywhere, and you know that's Chase, you'll find your way to it. And I think it's very important for some of these companies to be able to display their brand because of the heritage and the time that they've been in business, and to allow the logos, because sometimes all you need is a glimpse of a logo and you know exactly where you're going. And I think that's very important. Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. No one else? Okay. I'll close it to public testimony, open up to commission discussion. Anyone would like to start? Well, let me kick it off. What we're voting on here again tonight is not the size of the signs or anything. It's whether we're going to allow a variance to be submitted for a master plan. So all that aside, even though we had some plans and that about sizes and things like that, I don't think we need to consider that tonight. It's whether we want to allow the variance or not. So anyone else want to chime in? Commissioner Heng?
Well, I believe the last time I said the same thing. I like the ideas that they have, the 3 signs that they wanted or requested, because the building is extremely long. And when you're driving on the Garvey, there's really only 2 streets. One's going east and one's going west. So if you were to come in from the freeway, if you get lost or what have you, you just looked up a little bit and then you can see where Easter or the 5 acre is at on the east side and on the west side, so you can just go there instead of parking the wrong section and start walking. So I think that helped. And also because of it's along the freeway, and if you're zipping by, if you can see the little logo, you can actually tell that, hey, it's right over there, let's swing back. So that give them a little bit of advertisement too. And that building has been, I don't know what it has been for a long time, so it hasn't been a lot of activity over there for at least 20 years that I've been around. So I like to see something happening over there.
I have a question. You voted not to continue this last time. You were voted no on this item last time.
Well, last time I like to approve it last time.
Or you wanted to approve it, just going, oh, I see, okay, that's right, all right.
You know, I do want to see the continued success of this building and the improvements that are going on at that particular site, but I'm still going to hold my position from what was admitted as part of the administrative record on September 26th of 2017. So I will continue to say no, primarily again because there's an opportunity, I think, to work within the parameters of the code to try to comply with the zoning code. But again, given my previous vote, I will continue to hold that vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
What's on? Yeah, you know, I had the comments I made the last time. I still am sticking with those comments. You know, this time it's a little different because there's some more clarification. I was confused a little bit myself, you know, on this going for the variance, and then the sign criteria will come afterwards. So, you know, I am, as I said last time, you know, this, as Commissioner Ainge just said too, the building is a unique building that's been, you know, kind of dormant and, you know, just hanging out there, and it does need help. And they've come forward and invested in it and intend to, you know, revitalize it and bring it back. So I think as far as what's in front of us tonight, I'm okay with going forward with the variance, and then we'll go from there as far as what type of signage comes back in front of us with the program.
Mr. Castellanos.
Yeah, this one is tough based on the history of the building and the struggles it's had. I've always kind of wondered what held the building back. The facelift was probably one of the necessary things, although I'm not usually in favor of variances. I think that the history of this building does warrant unique attention and decision-making for this. Although it's not something to discuss today, if the variance is approved, I think the specific sign program would have to be a really strict one that requires the best of signs if we were to move forward with some sort of variance, which, by the way, what's presented in front of us today is not that. If we get to that in the future, I will make my recommendations on the best kinds of signs that I would recommend. But yeah, even when it was Wings, I've always called it the Wings building. It needed help back then. So I think that with the significant investment that's been made in this building and for the success of it in the future, I'm going to move towards approving a variance.
Thank you. I've got mixed emotions on this thing because, let me just ask a question to staff. If we approve this variance, is it a master variance for the city or just for that building?
Oh, no, it's just for this building.
Just for the building, okay, I just want to make sure. Because we went through quite a lengthy discussion last time about size of signs and why they needed them and all that. And I agreed that they needed signs for people to know where to enter the building. That's what we talked about, not for visual from the freeway, because these businesses are not retail. They're not attracting customers to come into them. It's people that have business to conduct at these locations. So they know the address, they know where it's at. And we somewhat agreed, and we had some drawings about the signs that were to be, the lettering was supposed to be the same as the top sign and not the logos and all that, and to keep it relatively small just for somebody that's, when they're parking, to know which entrance to go in, not a sign that's large to go onto the building to be seen from the freeway as an advertisement. So if we approve this variance tonight, I think we're still on accord that we're not talking about putting large signs up there. And I think that's going to be a disappointment to the applicant because I think that's what they're after. And it'll probably be a dogfight on that thing because we all said it's for a identification sign for people to get into that particular entrance of the building. So approving this variance tonight, if it's approved, I don't think it's going to appease the applicant, but we won't know that until that comes forward to us at the next meeting. So right now, I'm leaning to be against approving the variance because I don't think it's going to be very opportune for the applicant to get what they want out of this thing if we approve it. So I will ask for a staff to read the resolution numbers at this time.
And I will do that. I do want to make a couple comments just to make sure that we all understand what's happening here. We have variances come before us many times, and most of the time when a variance comes before, it's something like we want to go 10 feet where 8 feet is allowed. So and they have the plans and they say it's 10 feet tall, so you know, we know, everybody knows what's being approved. The difference here is we don't have a sign. So we don't know what they're really going to be asking for. All we know, what they're asking for specifically is to go from one building identification sign to 3 tenant signs. So that's what's before you tonight in the resolution. There, pardon the expression, especially Veronica, but there are many ways to skin a cat, right? I don't want to go there. I'm not going to talk about those, but there could be other ways we do this, but based on the fact that how the Lakes office has worked and the fact that the applicant actually talked about a master sign program, we thought that's the best way to go because everybody's already sort of in agreement that that's a good way to provide information as we move into the future. Because as we move into the future, this variance file is going to get buried somewhere, and I can guarantee that if I would be angry at a former planning commission or planning staff who made me find a variance from 1990 before I could approve something at the counter. That's just not good business sense. It's not customer friendly. So that's what the master sign plan does. It allows us to be customer friendly because when the customer comes in, the master sign plan's at the counter with the other 35 or whatever master sign plans we have. We only have master sign plans for things that allow more than one sign. So that's the reason it didn't work here until you had a variance because they're only allowed one sign. There's no reason for a master sign program for one sign. It's when you have multiple signs. So we prepared the resolution. There are findings that are included. And so those are what you're basing your decision on, is those findings that we basically drafted based on your discussion last time about the building being somewhat unique, and the topography and the way that the building is designed with a lobby on the first floor by itself and no tenant spaces on the first floor. So that's what the findings do, and we want to make sure you're clear on that, because that's the basis of your approval. And then we've included conditions of approval, and one of those conditions is condition E, that says assign criteria for review by the planning department and approval by the planning commission. So it needs to be submitted to us. We're going to review it. This is a start. This is actually, I would, just for sake of the applicants, fairly long ways from what a sign program will need to have in it that we will approve. It needs to direct the applicant for what they can and cannot do. So it needs to have prohibited signs included in it. It needs to be clear about what the process is. Generally, we have how many plans they're supposed to bring to us. So there's some information that's provided in there. And we've provided some things in there that we want to make sure is in the sign criteria, which some of them already are in the sign proposal that they've provided. Maximum dimensions of allowed sign areas, regulation on the type of signage allowed, internally illuminated, individual channel letters, what kind of signs are they telling the tenants that they want to see there, the location of the signs, which is in there now, and then information on the expiration of nonconforming uses. So that's an important issue, because that becomes an issue of how long does this commission want this to remain in effect. And so the way you draft that helps to understand how long it remains in effect. So let's just say, for sake of discussion, that tonight you had a sign, they had a sign before you, Boys and Girls Club, that's a sign. They're proposing a variance for this sign. They take that sign down, and 7 months later they come back with another sign. It's a nonconforming use. They have to propose a new variance. So that's the reason that you want to have some kind of language in there to clarify that if a new property owner buys it and takes down all the signs because he doesn't want signs up there, then it dies after 6 months. So there's some things that are very important why the sign criteria needs to be in place, at least from staff's point of view. So that's the reason we've set it up this way. Hopefully that makes sense. It sounded like you all understood that to begin with, but I wanted to, especially since we had interested parties in the applicant, I wanted to explain how we got where we're at. And I think that's
on that verbiage about removing the sign, is that going to be in the resolution, that once the applicant vacates the building, they have 60 days to remove it? Rather than waiting to a new applicant, the applicant may not come in there for 2 years.
Well, I think that would probably be best to be in the sign criteria.
Okay.
Because keep in mind that the variance is going to be approved, and in about 5 years it's going to be sent, either it's going to be digitized or sent off to storage. It's not going to be sitting at a planner's desk where they have easy access to it. Okay. So you want, the stuff you want to provide information for planners in the future needs to be in the sign criteria, because that's going to be available.
The only reason I bring that up is there's some businesses around there that have signs up that haven't been in that location for years, and they just leave them up there.
It can be an enforcement issue, but we can always, that language could always, and I don't think the applicant would have any problem putting that type of language in there.
Thank you.
I have one question.
Go ahead. Commissioner Reynolds?
So, I mean, this variance, pending approval, just allows to deviate from the code by allowing them to have 3 individual tenant wall signs. Then the next step is to come back with the sign criteria. So this is the logical, I mean, it may be a little weird, but it's a logical first step. Is it not?
I believe it's a logical step, and it's one that the city's already taken with the Lakes office building.
Right.
So we're actually, we're just being consistent with what the one time we've done it before, what we did that time, and it's worked.
Okay, so then they'll come back with the sign criteria, and then we can debate the nuts and bolts of that when that's in front of us.
Correct.
And we can go up, down, whatever, and do each individual sign, and...
Yes, you can go up, down. The only thing, and I think you already understand this, Commissioner Reynolds, is that you couldn't reduce the number of signs at that point. This resolution will allow 3.
This is granted 3. If it goes forward, they're granted 3.
Correct.
And then we'll deal with the sign criteria at that time.
Yes, correct.
Okay, got it.
Okay, so to answer your original question, the variance would have a resolution number of 17-5923. That's to approve, yes.
I'll make the motion to approve.
Have a second?
I'll second the motion.
We have a first and a second. Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Commissioner Hing.
Yes.
Commissioner Jimenez.
No.
Commissioner Redholz.
Yes.
Commissioner Castellanos.
Yes.
Chairman Holtz.
No. Thank you very much. Okay. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Microphone. Turn on the microphone. No, you didn't. Go ahead and announce it.
Okay, this action is final unless appealed to the city council within 10 days. Number 3, Planning Director's Modification Number 17-39, Administrative Use Permit Number 17-23, Categorical Exemption. Applicant is Greg Fick. Location 711 North Azusa Avenue. The request for approval of a planning director's modification to remodel the facade of an existing 5750 square foot single tenant building. The applicant intends to divide the building into 3 tenant spaces. The applicant is also requesting approval of an administrative use permit to allow for the off-sale of beer and wine at a proposed convenience store within a 3,000 square foot tenant space. May we have a staff report, and who is going to present it?
Yes, this report will be presented by our Assistant Planner, Veronica Hernandez.
Good evening, Chairman, members of the Planning Commission. Again, I'll be presenting PD Mod 17-39 and AUP 17-23, request to remodel the facade of an existing 575,750 square foot single tenant building, and as well for an administrative use permit for the off sale of beer and wine at a proposed convenience store. The Planning Commission approved precise plan number 823 on July 19th, 1989, allowing the construction of a single-tenant retail building. The building has been vacant since September 15th, 2017, when the former charter school ended the previous lease. The subject property is approximately 18,770 square feet in area and is located on the northwest corner of Azusa Avenue and Puente Avenue. The chart included in your staff report, as well as this presentation, details the surrounding zoning and uses. The applicant is proposing to complete a remodel of the existing 5,750 square foot tenant space. The single tenant space will be split into 3 individual tenant spaces. One space will be 3,000 square feet in size and will be occupied by a convenience store. The remaining 2 tenant spaces will be 1,375 square feet in size each. No specific uses are proposed for those tenant spaces, and no additions are proposed to the existing building. So here we have the existing facility or building. The applicant, again, is proposing facade renovations, including new paint, new alternative materials, new awnings, and new entry features. The current building is contemporary in style, features a parapet roof with an entry feature in the center of the building. The building currently features stucco walls, score lines, and a brown and beige color palette. The existing single-tenant space will be split into 3 individual tenant spaces. The existing center entry feature will be removed, and 2 entry features will be installed along the sides of the east facade. The southerly entrance will lead into the proposed 3,000 square foot convenience store. The northerly entry feature will allow for 2 entrances into the remaining 1,375 square foot tenant spaces. The new entry features will be painted in a dark gray color and will feature a stone tile base. The entrances will also feature score lines to match the existing building, and dark blue awnings will be installed along the north, south, and east elevations. An existing mechanical unit on the roof is currently screened by the center entry feature parapet wall. This unit will be relocated to the southerly portion of the roof to maintain screening by the new parapet wall. In summary, the revised facade will add color and detail, as well as create visual interest at the pedestrian level. The proposed redesign will also allow for multiple tenants within the building. The applicant is also proposing to relocate the existing trash enclosure slightly further to the north within the parking lot. An enclosure and solid architectural cover are required as conditions of approval. The total number of parking spaces on the site will remain the same at 22 spaces. Which one is it? Okay, so the trash enclosure is currently here, and they're moving it here. The The applicant is also requesting the approval of an administrative use permit for the off-sale of beer and wine, which is a Type 20 license, at the proposed convenience store. The convenience store will be open 24 hours a day and will employ 12 part-time and full-time employees. At the time the application was submitted, the municipal code required an administrative use permit for the off-sale of alcohol in areas of undue concentration, as defined by the California Department of Alcoholic Beverage Control. The city recently adopted a code amendment on August 15th, 2017, requiring approval of an administrative use permit for all off-sale liquor licenses, whether or not the proposed location is in an area of undue concentration. So we evaluated it with the previous code standards according to the undue concentration standard. ABC establishes a threshold of 3 off-sale liquor licenses in the subject census tract. 3 existing locations are approved for the off-sale of liquor at Food for Less, Stater Brothers, and 7-Eleven. The approval of this request would allow for a 4th location within that census tract for an off-sale liquor license. Police consulted with the police department regarding the proposal for a convenience store with incidental beer and wine sales. The police department had no concerns about the proposal. Staff did receive 2 phone calls regarding the proposed sale of beer and wine. Ernestina Soto, resident of 721 North Azusa, expressed her opposition based on the number of locations in the area which currently sell alcohol. She also expressed concerns about locating a liquor store near an area with many children and senior citizens. Ms. Soto expressed her support for a convenience store as long as it did not sell alcoholic beverages. Staff also received a call from Dayanara Frausto, resident at 71 North Azusa Avenue, who also opposed the ABC license request based on the number of liquor stores in the area, a concern about the nearby homeless population, and the number of senior citizens nearby. Fabiola Wong, resident, submitted a letter on October 24th, and you have a copy of that as well, opposing the request based on the number of liquor stores in the area and the absence of crime statistics for the reporting district within the staff report. Staff has made the required findings for an administrative use permit, which are included in your staff report. We have also included conditions of approval for the planning director's modification. The project is considered categorically exempt according to CEQA guidelines, and that the proposed remodel is of an existing building, and the proposed use would occupy that building. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission adopt a resolution approving administrative use permit number 17-23 and approve planning director's modification number 17-39 with the conditions of approval provided in the staff report. I did want to note 2 discrepancies. One was in the public notice, which listed it as a type 21 license, which is beer, wine, and distilled spirits liquor, but it's type 20, so just beer and wine, no liquor would be sold here. And then on the conditions of approval, item G references a bona fide eating place, so that we can revise that should you decide to approve the liquor license or the beer and wine request. We would just revise that to say proposed convenience store use instead of the restaurant language. That concludes staff's presentation. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, and the applicant is also present.
Do we have any questions of staff for this? Commissioner Jimenez?
All right. Yeah, I have a question. So the only known tenant or known business is the proposed convenience store. The other 2, we don't have any information on that. Is that correct?
Correct, and you might want to double check with the applicant, but as proposed to us, those are future uses as yet undetermined.
And the 3,000 square foot convenience store, do we know what percentage of that at this point will be devoted to beer and wine?
That would perhaps be a better question for the applicant. In their business operations plan, it was described as incidental. So.
Yeah, that's pretty vague. Oh, all right, thank you.
Commissioner Jimenez?
Just double checking, because of the undue concentration, is the applicant required to make findings of public convenience?
That is correct.
Okay, and the applicant has to make those findings, correct?
Oh, no, staff makes those findings. Oh, maybe not.
Chair Holtz, Commissioner Jimenez and fellow commissioners, or not fellow commissioners, but other commissioners. I just reviewed Business and Professions Code, Section 23817.7 is cited in Ms. Wong's letter. The local governing body of the area or its designated subordinate officer body, which is the Planning Commission, determines the public convenience or necessity would be served by the issuance. The other findings or that are set forth in the letter are for the applicant to show to ABC. So this body does make a finding of public necessity or convenience, which is actually within, if you were to approve this item, it would be within your administrative use permit approval, and its finding, it matches the first finding of that approval.
Thank you.
And to add to that a little bit, the code also, if you approve an administrative use permit, it instructs the director to send the letter of public convenience and necessity.
Any other questions, staff? None?
Let me just ask one more.
Commissioner Reynolds?
Thank you. What information was the police department given regarding this application?
It's in there. No
Huh? I know they have no problem, but what were they told?
So I routed the plans to them and described the proposed convenience store as well as the copy of the business operations plan and what they were proposing to sell.
And I can add to that a little bit. What they usually do is look at the crime report for that area and how many calls for service and what have you. So they do an analysis of that particular area where there's problems before they make that recommendation.
And that is correct. They generally do that. We can bring that information we have in the past at certain times. So if the Planning Commission had a desire to see those numbers themselves, we could bring those.
Commissioner Jimenez.
The other Commissioner Jimenez.
I knew what you meant. Okay, in the staff report, was it Food for Less and Stater Brothers and 7-Eleven that were the other?
Within that census tract, yes.
What about CVS across the street?
It's technically in a different census tract.
Got it, okay.
There are locations near there that sell alcohol but are in a different census tract.
Got it, thank you.
Just maybe to add, so then that probably means that the census tract runs somehow centerline down Azusa, which means the other liquor stores on the east side of Azusa are in that other census tract, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? If not, would the applicant like to come up? Mr. Fick? Are you Mr. Fick?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I did want to address a couple of the comments and concerns that have come up already. First of all, this is a convenience store. There's a big difference from a convenience store and a liquor store. And that makes it easier to find public convenience and necessity. A liquor store probably has 80% liquor, beer, wine. What we're proposing here is a type 20 license with just beer and wine only. There was a question about the sales floor, like the percentage of beer and wine. That's limited to about 5%. If you look at the floor plan, there's 4 cooler doors that are proposed and then 1 end cap on a gondola. And so it's beer and wine only. And it's really an accessory use to the sales of everything that goes on in the convenience store. Typically, what we've seen is 12 to 15% of the revenue of beer and wine sales accounts for the total sales for everything that goes on in the convenience store for this particular tenant. There is a training program that all employees go through before they can sell beer and wine. They have to be able to pass this as well as selling items for tobacco and issues with loitering. They also have a panic button on them at all times in case there's ever any issues. There's conditions for this project to have security cameras all over the place, so that also prevents loitering. And wanted to reiterate also that police didn't seem to have an issue with crime on this particular project or the sales of beer and wine. I am fine with all the conditions of approval that have, we don't have any issues with them. And here to answer any questions that you may have as well.
Any questions of Mr. Fick? Commissioner Madden? Castellanos.
Okay, so you said it's about 12% of revenues. What comprises the majority of revenues in a convenience store?
The revenues are common goods, so one of the big pushes is fresh food that they have there. Other ancillary drinks, soft drinks, energy drinks, food, common goods that you just come by and you come home and they have toilet paper and just common household goods as well. Coffee takes up a lot of sales as well. Lottery tickets.
So kind of like the 7-Eleven is your competition.
It is a proposed corporate. It's a corporate convenience store.
Got it. Okay, so it's not going to be independent.
It is not going to be a mom and pop independent store. It's going to be something that has programs set in place.
Well, you did mention about loitering and cameras.
Yeah.
I'm glad you bring that up because the 7-Eleven, which is on Workman and Azusa, or close to that intersection, does have that issue, and I've been meaning to bring that up, and there's this guy that I'm just tired of there.
Right.
So yes, if we move forward with that, please do enforce that because as best you can, because it is a problem right down the street.
Absolutely, and we have no problem posting signs, or being conditioned to post signs for no loitering, just things that help deter that as well. But security cameras do help that as well,
Thank you.
And quite frankly, loitering isn't good for business either. You have people in front loitering, and it just doesn't help. And people don't want to come into your business when you have loitering. So it's a lose-lose.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, okay, that's my question. Thank you.
Commissioner Reynolds?
A couple of questions. So, I mean, it is not a 7-Eleven?
There is a letter of intent to be a 7-Eleven.
A corporate, okay.
Yes, a corporate 7-Eleven. There is a letter of intent for it to be one. Things fall, basically, it's going to the real estate division pending approval of beer and wine sales.
Right. Now, at some point, they could sell it as a franchise, could they not? I mean, down the line? I mean, it could be a franchise, next year.
They still have, they still do have same regulations.
Right. No, I understand that.
Yeah.
Now, it's 3,000 square feet. Is that, what's the typical size of a 7-Eleven?
3,000 square feet.
Is it 3,000 square feet? Wow.
Yep.
Didn't think they were that big.
Yep.
A lot of coffee, huh?
All their prototypes are, they're 3,000 square feet.
And can you give us any indication as to the other two?
So the other two, I mean, really the Domino, the first, we're trying to lease them out. The Domino falls with the first big piece, and that's what we're hoping to get accomplished tonight. But it's retail. The reality is, as of right now, the parking is limited to retail-type uses that can fit in there because the site's so small and the parking is limited. Yeah.
Anyone else? Mr. Jimenez.
Thank you. Depending on who the operator is going to be, are they familiar with this site plan?
Yes.
And they've accepted the site plan?
Yes.
Okay, so we're not going to see some sort of modification to the site plan?
Right. So the reason why that we relocated that trash enclosure is because what it does, it currently blocks the tenant space, the third tenant space coming in. So that's why we had to move it to the other side so that you could have that walkability in front of the other tenant spaces. But yeah.
Can you maybe help me walk through the thought process as far as this location? I think within a 3-mile radius, you have a saturation of like uses. I'm going to use that term to describe the uses. So how did this property?
It's supply and demand. It really is. I mean, they have interest in this particular site. There's demographics and markets, that they look outside of what I look into. They're a different market than what has been mentioned, like a liquor store, a grocery store, and people that go to these convenience stores, they come after work. They don't want to hassle with long lines and time. They just want to pop in, pop out, get their goods. If they want to grab a bottle of wine along with their goods, then they have the ability to do so. It's also a known commodity that when they do go into like 7-Eleven, that there is going to be beer and wine sold there. So.
Would you care to share how you would address the undue concentration with ABC? How would you make those findings?
Sure. First one is crime, and police has already said that that crime isn't an issue, and usually that's the first thing that they look at. And the second is public convenience This project's built around public convenience. You know, you go into a store and you can grab convenience items and goods, and beer and wine is an accessory. That's the main thing. It's an accessory to the goods that are sold. And the reality is the revenues are not the majority. It's not a liquor store, you know. So that's where you make those findings for the public convenience and necessity for these types of projects.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Just for point of clarification, whether it's a 7-Eleven or a different corporate store, it's destined to be a 24/7 operation?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? No? Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Fick. Would you please fill out a card and leave it with staff? I appreciate it. Oh. Does anyone else want to come up and talk in favor of the project? Okay. I have some cards here from Mr. Wilkins. I think probably I could guess you're not for this project. Would you like to come up and speak?
Thank you, Commissioner Holtz. Yes, my name is Forrest Wilkins. On Friday, my wife and I have been residents of West Covina for 45 years. I am a retired Los Angeles policeman. I spent 30 and a half years on the street. I spent 19 of my 30 years in the south end of Los Angeles, where there was an undue amount of liquor stores where alcohol was being sold. Alcohol depresses the central nervous system. It causes people to do things they wouldn't normally do when they're not under the influence of alcohol. As it's been pointed out in the staff report, if this were approved, it would be one more than what the ABC would suggest for undue concentration. On the other side of the street, as it was pointed out by Commissioner Jimenez, there's the CVS. You go south a little bit between Roland and Workman. You have two liquor stores on the east side of the street. One is closer to Roland, and the other one is closer to Workman there. So considering the area between Workman, you have the 7-Eleven just south of Workman, but Workman and Puente, on the east side of the street, you have two liquor stores. On the west side of the street, you have the 7-Eleven, you have Stater Brothers, and you have Food for Less. So that's 5 places you could buy alcohol. It was 8+ years ago that I did a survey because I was opposed to changing the city ordinance for gas stations to sell alcohol. At that time, as I recall, there were like, I forget, it was 137 or 141 retail establishments in the city limits of West Covina that sold alcohol beverages. Now that was liquor stores, that was convenience stores, that was grocery stores, that was pharmacies, and so forth. My whole point in mentioning this is if anybody coming through West Covina or resides in West Covina, if they so desire to buy an alcoholic beverage, there are plenty of places to do that. I don't think we need to add another one. I'm opposed to it. Now that I'm through with that, may I add some comment about the previous proposals from before you? In the building south of Garvey there, years ago, Social Security was in that building. After they left there, then they went to the Coast Federal Savings, which is the Wells Fargo building now.
I'm sorry, Mr. Will, this is not the place for that.
Okay, I just thought I'd add a little history there.
All right. Thank you. Jerry Botris.
Excuse me. I live in the area, not in the census tract. Census tracts are fine for certain things, certain concepts, but the reality is, and I am really disappointed that we'd have a convenience store even coming into this area. We're right near the Covina, West Covina border, so where Mr. Wilkins was talking about places, if just go down the street on Azusa, and we've got the gas stations that do sell alcohol and convenience items on that part of, towards Covina. There's a 7-Eleven, I think it's Vincent, because I've gone in there when I needed something once in a while. I'm not a convenience store person. I don't like the signs saying no loitering. I don't like to shop there. I want to shop differently. I don't like the people that are in the parking lot hassling me, even though the stores have to deal with it. There is an awful lot of alcohol. I drink, so I'm not against alcohol. Okay, that's not my issue. It's the changing nature of the neighborhood, and when we have to do it, what is this, an exception or whatever the term is, because only so many are allowed, so we're going to make an exception. Why have plans if we're just going to make exceptions all the time? We've got now a bunch of gas stations, drug stores, grocery stores, and convenience stores in that area that sell this stuff to varying degrees. We also have dollar stores, massage shops, check cashing, bail bonds, and nail shops have been coming in. This is not the trend I want to see my city go. I would like to have different businesses in the city, not businesses that need to have exceptions to alcohol stuff, because we can get it real easy. Covina's rules are different, and you just go to the gas station down there and you can get it, alcohol anytime. We don't need this, and I'm just asking that you keep to the existing plans and not do whatever it's called. And I'm sorry, listening to the salesperson, that was really bothersome to me, because what he's viewing as pros, I'm viewing as negatives, as a person who lives here. And I would love to see my city go a different direction. Thank you.
Just a point of clarification, this is not an exception, correct?
No, there's no, I think she might be referring to the undue concentration, which is a state ABC requirement, not a city, that's not a city standard.
Right. Okay. Next speaker is Arturo Gonzalez, who is opposed. Welcome, sir.
My name is Arturo Gonzalez. I'm a resident of West Covina, and I wanted to speak out in opposing this convenience store, and it's basically what my fellow residents have expressed, the abundance of convenience or retailers that sell alcohol. The subject census tract shows the 3 stores that currently sell alcohol, which are the Food for Less, 1650 North Azusa, Stater Brothers, 375 North Azusa, 7-Eleven, 235 North Azusa Avenue. But I did want to also put on the record the other census tract, which is clear across the street on the east side of Azusa Avenue. And again, there are currently four retail outlets that do sell alcohol. Rockview Dairy, 1818 East Roland Avenue, which is basically near the corner of Roland Avenue and Azusa. You have Good Neighbors Liquor Store in that same shopping area, 430 North Azusa Avenue. Leprechaun Liquor and Market, 334 North Azusa Avenue. And also the CBS at 702 North Azusa Avenue. Again, it's just my opposition. It has to do with the amount of retail outlets that would be having alcohol for sale. That would, you add this other, that would be 8 total. That's substantial within about a quarter of a mile from each other. And I just wanted to just express my feeling and my family's feeling about that. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Fick, would you like to come up and rebut?
Yeah.
Fill out a card when you get a chance, Robert, please.
or good evening. I'm opposed to the proposed project. I didn't have time to do as much research as I'd like, so what you have in front of you are just Google Maps I've done. The first page is liquor stores. I try to do within like a 3 to 5 minute driving distance from the site. So the ones that you see listed there, Jerry's House of Spirits, Big Boys or Big Bob's Liquor, Michael's Liquor Market, Johnny's Liquor, Starlight Liquor, Liquidland Liquor, AG Wine and Spirits Liquor, J&H Liquor, Stonewall Liquors, Liquorland, Red Carpet Liquor, Good Neighbors Liquor, Leprechaun Liquor, and Jug and Jigger Liquor. So those are obviously outside of the census tract, but for me, the census tract, in my opinion, isn't necessarily a good indication of how concentrated an area is. Those sites are all within 3 minutes to 5 minutes drive. Also on the second page, you have convenience stores. There is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 7-Elevens within 3 to 5 minutes from the proposed site. So in my opinion, there's a sufficient amount of convenience in at least in the northern end of the city, which is the area I focused on. And let me see, 4 of those 7-Elevens are within a block or 2 of the proposed 7-Eleven, which I guess would be within walking distance. And then the last page are gas stations. Thankfully, in West Covina, we maintain the ban on gas station alcohol, but just north of this site is Covina, an unincorporated county. So the sites you have there, which are Arco, Shell, 76, Chevron, and Mobil, all within 3 to 5 minutes of the site, all sell alcohol. So that's a total of 6 sites that sell alcohol, gas stations, 17 7-Elevens, and I can't recall the number of liquor stores, but somewhere in the same range. So my opposition is focused on finding B, which I think that the allowing another liquor store to go into an area that's already over-concentrated will be detrimental to the community, and it will result in negative impacts that I don't feel will be resolved by camera systems. I just think that they run far and longer than maintaining the site itself. They increase crime, possible drunk driving, loitering, like was mentioned earlier, and just attracting crowds, especially after 10 p.m. Since this is a 24-hour operation, from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m., 3 a.m. is when most things go awry. So in general, I just oppose the project for that reason. I think that the city, like I've mentioned in the past, is over-concentrated in general. I think we're about 10 liquor stores over-concentrated as a city. And then if we go ahead and approve an additional liquor store for this census tract, that sets a precedent for a lot of other census tracts where we're going to go over the ABC recommended limit, and that could result, if we do that for every census tract, every application, that could result in dozens of liquor stores and alcohol establishments over the ABC recommended limit. However, I do understand that you may not agree with me, so although I do not wish for you to approve it, I did look at, if you do move forward, the conditions of approval seem very lax to me. If it does move forward, I think we need to really nail down some conditions of approval that will help mitigate. I don't think a camera system is enough. Some of the ideas I had was limiting sale hours after 10, maybe no sales of alcohol until 6 in the morning. Security, possibly security at the site. One recommendation that I just saw in another area was they conditioned non-refrigerated alcohol to not allow people to buy it, pop it open, and walk down the street with a cold beer. Kind of forced them to take it to their homes and refrigerate there. And then signing, I think that there should be some type of signing plan or sketch that doesn't allow the site to be blighted. Maybe submit something to that effect. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Please fill out a card before you go. Anyone else want to speak in opposition? Okay, if not, Mr. Fick, would you like to come up and rebut? Thank you.
Yes, thanks again. What I heard a lot is liquor store, liquor store, liquor store, and just want to reiterate that this is not a liquor store. This is a convenience store. I understand that the conditions were a little vague, so we don't have an issue with, limiting, like I mentioned, that the sales floor is limited to 5% of the shelf space. That's not an issue. I would say that security guards are not an option for this particular tenant. They don't have them. What they do have, like I said, they have panic buttons on them. They have protocols. They have training programs that work. Whenever they have a panic button at the register, they have a panic button on them. So if there's ever an issue with security, they can always hit that and alert the appropriate safety responders. I'd argue that camera systems do work very well. So I think that's another mitigation measure in there that works. Let's see. And then just the findings for undue concentration. Those findings are made every single day in every single city all the time. So, usually when you have a major issue with ABC or a jurisdiction, it's if you have you're over concentration in census tract by like 10 sites. In this particular case, it's one, and I feel it's a different use than, like I said, a grocery store. And it really is a matter of convenience for this store. The convenience store by itself is a permitted right by use. So as I mentioned, all we're trying to do is be able to sell beer and wine at this location at 5% of the shelf space, of the store. So I think that's, and like I said, we're open to conditions to, make everyone feel more comfortable that it doesn't become a liquor store and that everyone's safe.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Fick for you? Thank you, Mr. Fick.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to close it to public testimony at this time. Open it up to commission discussion.
Perhaps I could make a couple comments before you begin discussion. I just want to make sure that recall, because there's been discussion on the AUP, but recall that before you tonight also is a planning director's modification for the redesign of the building. There hasn't been any comments on that, but I did want to call your mind to that and also point out that that information is provided, the conditions of approval for that are provided starting on page 5, 6 through page 7 of the staff report. Those are in the staff report because there's not a resolution for planning director's modifications. And then the alcohol off sale, those conditions are on the resolution on page 4. So that's, just wanted to remind and clarify where those, because there's 2 sets of conditions.
Sure, Redholz.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a couple of questions, perhaps for the city attorney. Several people have mentioned the fact that there are other quote-unquote liquor licenses that are just outside the census tract, but in another census tract. How much weight, if any, do we give that information? Or are we limited to only what's in the census tract that's in front of us?
Commissioners, the census tract information that's really a parameter of ABC. It's not really necessarily part of your determination. One of the findings that you would make if you were to approve this item is that it would be necessary or convenient, this type of use for that location. So you might consider surrounding uses as part of your determination. You can set aside any census tract.
Okay. And just to be clear, it was mentioned that there was a concern that somebody could pop open a beer and start drinking on the street. Isn't that illegal now to do that? I believe it is. Right? It is, right? Okay, so that, and it was also mentioned limiting liquor sales to 10 p.m. Is that something this city can do, or is that governed by the state law?
City has the ability to do that, yes.
It does? Okay.
So that the AUP, that's part of the process. We can place conditions. They have to have a nexus. There has to be a connection between what's proposed and what the condition is. So we have to be careful there, but I think there is a connection between liquor sales and hours of operation. So we do that all the time with restaurants on sale. We could do that, yes.
Commissioner Castellanos.
Thank you. Jeff, a quick question on the CCTV requirements for the police department, and this may be a question for them, but the first one regarding the resolution, I don't know that that's really up to date anymore. Would we have the ability to require more? I'm in the process of installing 2 systems, and that's really more comparable to the system I installed like 8 years ago.
Yeah, so the police department started putting this condition on 3 or 4 years ago, maybe longer than that, maybe 5 years ago. And I think that they were trying to be helpful and to let people know that this is the basic system. And they don't advise this system, they say this is the minimum. And I think when I've been in conversations, when they've conversed with an applicant, they always tell them, you can get a better system, and they're not that expensive. So I agree with you wholeheartedly. I'm sure if 7-Eleven's systems are going to be better than this.
And in the future, can we talk about recommending to them of maybe increasing at least that first item on resolution as the bare minimum requirement? Because it is now so cheap and commercially available to get better
Yes,
anywhere.
I can communicate with them and see if they want to change their standard condition.
Cool, and I could provide info on what is available as the standard pretty much everywhere now.
Commissioner Jimenez.
Jeff, does the zoning code define the difference, or does it differentiate the difference between a liquor store and a convenience store?
No.
So it's one and the same?
They would fall under whatever, what am I trying to say? The liquor license that's granted, as long as they follow the parameters of that, it's one and the same, yes.
Okay.
And the conditions of approval.
Right, so the liquor license will say beer and wine, but for purposes of the zoning code, it's going to call it a...
It's going to say it allows for off-sale liquor sales or off-sale alcohol uses. Now, I think that there was some, I'm sorry,
as a land use definition.
Yes, there's no specific, convenience store I don't even think is listed in our code that I recall at all. Liquor store maybe, but if you don't have both, you don't have a definition that distinguishes.
Fair enough, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. I'll close it to public testimony and commission discussion is over. Do we have any motions? Or we need resolution numbers, I'm sorry.
We haven't had discussion.
Pardon?
We had discussion.
Okay, let's have commission discussion, and who would like to start?
You want to go? Go ahead.
Okay.
Commissioner Castellano.
Thank you, Chairman. A lot of good points were made today. Definitely, well, didn't really need the maps to know where to get beer, but and I mean, it's so prolific that I don't know if the addition of another convenience store will make people rush out and drink more or start drinking. Although, as I mentioned earlier, I do agree that loitering is a real problem. And as I mentioned, on Workman and Azusa, it is a problem. That is something that we need to take a hard look at. And I know enforcement is an issue. Enforcement costs money, costs police resources. So I am concerned about that. But in the larger scheme of things, I think having a vacant property is also a problem and not a good thing for the city. So that being said, although I think that there's a real risk of loitering being an issue, I am okay with the use being proposed based on the fact that I just don't think that there's going to be a rush to start drinking based on a new convenience store. So that being said, I am comfortable with this item going forward.
Thank you. Commissioner.
Yeah, thank you. First, let me say a couple of things. You know, I'm happy to see that this building, which some time back was a Blockbuster video, and then it became a short-lived educational use. Now, that type of use, as I said, I think I was here when that went through, you know, it fills up a vacant building. It brings in no revenue to the city at all, that type of operation, that type of use. So I'm happy to see this building once again transitioning into a retail use, going from one to none. Now there's proposed potentially 3 retail uses. So that's a good thing. If this were I guess it's a type 21 license, just a full-blown retail liquor store, I would probably not go for it. I would have concerns about another full-blown liquor store sitting there. The fact that it is a convenience store with limited shelf space, and also the fact that it is a corporate-operated 7-Eleven, you know, any corporate, they're going to follow the strict guidelines themselves. They're going to make sure that whoever is the manager and the management team is going to keep it clean, keep it stocked, keep it well organized. They're not going to allow folks, quote unquote, to just hang around. You know, then I just don't see it. I just don't see people popping open, you know, beer cans in the front, and the manager or the regional manager or whoever coming by going, yeah, how's that? Is that good? Cold enough for you? You know, I just don't see that. So, you know, like my fellow commissioner to my left, I'm going forward with this at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Hernandez.
You know, from this chair, I don't think I have too much of a concern regarding the proposed use, the convenience store. The convenience store, though, is a permitted by right use. The problem where I'm having a little bit of heartburn is with the alcohol sales. Now, I know we talked a little bit about undue concentration. It's not necessarily an issue that's before us per se. It's maybe addressing one condition. But we do have an area that's already laboring under various options for alcohol. I'm not sure that the addition of additional alcohol along the corridor there would provide any benefit or convenience to a certain individual. So I go back to trying to make the findings for the proposal. And a few things jump out at me. One is the particular location necessary or desirable. So I think, one, the use allowed by right, which is a convenience store as defined by the applicant, probably may be desirable. I'm not sure if it necessary is a word. But I'm not sure that the inclusion of alcohol sales will contribute to the general well-being of the neighborhood, which is something that I have to make as part of the findings. Finding B also focuses on safety, peace, or general welfare. I can't necessarily say that drinking alcohol will maybe lead to, how to say, more crime in a particular area. But it's just that the public record, I think, today shows that there was some concern regarding the inclusion of alcohol. And it's for that reason that I'm opposed to the request for alcohol. Not necessarily the use of a convenience store. I actually welcome that they do a convenience store. But we don't know for sure. I don't think it's a public record. I think that 7-Eleven will be the operator. And if so, there may be already the area that's well served by the 7-Elevens that are in the immediate area. Again, through a quick search of a 3-mile radius, I believe you'll quickly pop up 3 to 5 as Robert showed us earlier. So from this seat, again, I welcome the use, but not necessarily the alcohol that's associated with it. Thank you.
Commissioner Hay?
I have the same thought as my fellow Commissioner Jimenez. If the place has been vacant for a long time, and it is great that we are having a use, a convenient use, I'm glad for that. I mean, if a store come in, you can buy chips or some convenient use for your home, go in quickly, coming out quickly. However, I'm not very comfortable with ABCUs. I think we can go with the convenience store and leave out the ABCUs, or the liquor portion.
Where I'm coming from my seat, is that it's been said before, the location's been vacant for quite some time. And like I said, we had a Blockbuster, then we had a school. And I will tell you right now, that it's being vacant there, and it does attract some of the homeless at night, just hanging around there because there's nobody to shoo them away. The PD has no problem with it. And behind this facility, I'm not sure if it's a retirement home or a senior assist facility or whatever. And then there's quite a few apartments that are within the same block. And a lot of those people don't work, 8 to 5. Some of them work at night and all that. So having a convenience store there, I think, is great. And, we're only talking about there's no liquor going to be sold or no hard liquor. There's only 5% of the shelf storage is going to be for beer and wine. So I don't see it as a problem. And if it's one of the corporate stores, I'm sure they'll police it quite well. So I'm leaning in favor of approving it as is, because I just don't see that it's a problem. I think it's going to be a benefit to the city. I think it's going to be a benefit to the neighborhood and to the neighbors that are around there. So I'm in favor of the project. We have some resolution numbers, please.
Yes, and I'm going to, what I might suggest is that you might want to consider separating the two applications. One is a planning director's modification, which in this case does not require
For the building?
For the building improvements, because what I'm hearing is I think that there may be different vote for the two different things. So you might want to entertain the vote for the planning director's modification, which conditions are in the staff report, and it doesn't require a resolution, and then take the administrative use permit discussion, and that resolution number would be 17-5924.
This is for the building or for the application?
That's for the ABC application.
Okay. Let me ask first, and we didn't talk about it at the commission, does anybody have any problems with the building part of it? None? Okay. You'd issued. Okay, 17-5924, do I have a motion?
Well, so I would suggest a motion on what you just asked. Is there any concerns on the planning director's modification? I would ask for a motion on that and a second, and then have a vote on that, and then move to the resolution for the ABC license.
So we're going to do the building first?
That's how it appears in the staff report. So
all right, so we'll do the building first.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the PD mod.
I'll second it.
We have a first and a second. First and a second. Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, Commissioner Hing, I just combined your name. Commissioner Minez?
Yes.
Commissioner Redholz?
Aye.
Commissioner Castellanos?
Yes.
Chairman Holtz?
Aye, passes 5-0. Okay, takes us to 17-5924. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
We have a first and a second. Can we have a roll call, please?
Now, before we take that vote, there has been some discussion on perhaps conditions, reminding you that the conditions are on page 4. Right. And the one I'm hearing that has been mentioned a couple times is restricting the floor area for sales of alcohol. So my question to you is would that be part of this motion, or are you wanting to make the motion based on the conditions that are before you?
I'm fine with the way it is, unless someone would like to amend my motion, and we can consider that.
No, I'm fine the way it is.
So am I.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second, and I'll continue with the roll call vote. Commissioner Hing? No. Commissioner Jimenez?
No.
Commissioner Redholz?
Aye.
Commissioner Castellanos?
Aye.
Chairman Holtz?
Aye, passes 3-2. This action is final unless appealed to the City Council within 10 days. Thank you. All right. Brings us to item number 4, administrative use permit number 17-24, Subcommittee for Design Review number 17-52, categorical exemption. Applicant is Mark Showman, location 3014 East Cameron Avenue. The request is for administrative use permit to demolish an existing 4,293 square foot single-family house and a 600 square foot garage, fill in the swimming pool, and remove miscellaneous site features to construct a new 7,195 square foot two-story house. Do we want to hear a staff report, or are we just going to make a motion to?
Oh, you want to hear a staff report?
All right.
So it'll be very quickly. We need to renotice it. We had some incongruities in the notice, so we need to renotice it. So that's why we're asking for the continuance. And we would ask for the continuance till November 28th, 2017, at which time it will be renoticed.
Okay. Is it, should we
should have a motion
mention why it was asked to be moved?
Yeah, there's balconies that were not, we didn't, on the plans, there were not square footages listed for the balconies, but we noticed that there's a significant number of balconies, and balconies over 200 square feet require an administrative use permit.
Was there anything about a neighbor concern?
No, well, okay, so going backwards one step, an administrative use permit is reviewed by staff.
Right.
So the first thing we do when when it's complete and we're ready to notice it is we take it to subcommittee, and the subcommittee looks at it and decides whether or not we should take it to the planning commission or just go ahead and do the mailings. In this case, the subcommittee said, well, let's just do the mailings.
Okay.
So we did the mailings, and then we did get a response from one individual who was concerned and asked for a hearing. So that's why it was scheduled for the hearing.
All right. I just want to make sure everybody knew that. Okay, so we're making a motion now to continue it to November 28th.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
First, have a second. Do we need a roll call? No? Okay. So approved. So
well, you need a vote.
November 28th.
All in favor?
You don't all in favor.
You need a vote.
We
you
just
don't need
did. All in favor.
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0.
I'm going to get a card for you. I want to mention something about the project on Garvey there, the office building. I didn't speak on it before.
On Garvey?
Yeah, the office building in Garvey you talked about tonight. You know, I hope that actually that it works out for them, because I tell the history of that building. I don't know what year it was built, but here's a long time ago. I was a resident when it was built. It was a wooden building. It never was successful. They remodeled it and they put stucco on it, and somewhere Social Security got there, which has made it fairly good. But then when they moved, it's been a problem ever since. And they put a lot of money into it. I think he said 1.1 million this time. And so hopefully it works out to where it will be satisfactory to them. I don't see any problem with putting some signs. And as you go up Citrus, right there at the Citrus and the freeway, the Davenport property, Keller Williams Realty has got their sign right on the front of their building. It's right in the corner there. And the opposite side has got Wells Fargo Bank, and Davenport Properties has a sign in the front. So that's a smaller building. They've got 3 signs. And Keller Williams has got the whole real estate thing right on the front of the building in neon. So hopefully it works out to where, you know, I'd like to see it work out for them, because I don't really see, it is down in a hole there from the freeway, and I think the signs are really help. So anyway, that's my thought on it. I'll fill out a card for you. Okay?
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. Okay, no other people. Commission reports, comments, or miscellaneous items?
I do have something.
What's the score?
Well, it's 3-1. Dodgers won. But on other positive news, the Tacos El Gavilan is looking almost complete. So
Rural's burritos, are they?
Riros, I don't know. I might have to send them a letter asking if they would entertain a takeover. I'll get that thing going quickly. That's all I've got to report. Buy them out.
On the planning director report, we have the forthcoming, and just a reminder that on the November 14th meeting, there will not be a meeting on November 14th for the planning commission. There's possibly going to be a special city council meeting that night, so you're invited to come. You just have to set in a different location if you do come. It will be here, yeah. That would be districting, yeah. And then just a note for those subcommittee members, there still might be a subcommittee that night. We don't know yet, but there might be. And then we have a project status report on your forthcoming, on the planning director's report as well, that shows the status of projects the planning commission has approved over the last few years. And then lastly, some of you may have an interest. I think some of you came into some of the other active transportation plan workshops. There is one tomorrow night at 6:30 at the Senior Center if you'd be interested in coming to that. So just wanted to make you aware of that.
Was there anything special at the Coyote meeting last night?
I don't know.
Okay.
I think there's a flyer. There's some flyers that you can.
I saw that.
Yeah, I grabbed one myself. So.
Thank you. City council action?
Nothing to report on city council action.
Well, thank you. If there's nothing further, meeting's adjourned. I don't know what it is. I come in this building and my voice changes. I did it last time.